All right, good morning, Bill Murray, and thanks for coming on the program today with the INFRAGARD editorial. And today you're going to be talking about net neutrality. So go ahead, Bill, take it away.
Um, Permit me to indulge in a little nostalgia. The first modem I ever saw was the size of a two-drawer file cabinet. It operated at 300 baud and was owned by the phone company. I was assured that that was as fast as data could go through the network. Remember, we were doing digital signaling over analog for almost 40 years. Only within the last 10 years has digital signaling penetrated the last mile. The network was circuit switched. The switch was electromechanical, internal to the network, and filled a large building. I was also assured that it was not important because data would never account for more than a tiny fraction of the traffic on the network. While Ma Bell was one of the best places in the country to work, she was technologically stagnant, in large part because of government-granted monopoly and government-granted tax incentives intended to spread the use of telephony. The first time I encountered the issue that we now call net neutrality was in 1986. I made the mistake of saying in a meeting that I thought that the right way for the carriers to charge us was by the bit. My boss, an IBM group executive, was quick to correct me. IBM's vision was to be charged for the dark circuit. If there was going to be an advantage gained by better signaling of digital over analog, IBM wanted the benefit of it. The current issue of net neutrality first arose when AT&T suggested that they should be able to charge Amazon and Google more for the same circuits because Google and Amazon's bits were worth more than other bits. Needless to say, Google and Amazon didn't like that idea very much. They had a different vision of how things ought to work. They got themselves in a lot of trouble over that. But recently, Google and Amazon, Google and Verizon entered into an agreement that they thought would help fix things. Actually, what happened was Google gave away to Verizon things on the wireless side that were in the interest of consumers in order to protect things on the wired side that were important to Google. Excuse me just a second. In part, Google was trying to avoid regulation when they did this. Through its relationship with Apple, AT&T has been able to charge more for some applications than for others. AT&T doesn't control the traffic. The device does. Why does the device do it? Because Apple says it will. Why does Apple say it will? Well, Apple says it will because of its relationship with AT&T. Of course, it turns out the wireless side is the important side. In 5 years, the famous last mile will be all but wireless. Comcast got in trouble when it was disclosed that they were breaking sessions that they believed to be being used by BitTorrent. BitTorrent, as you know, is a collaborative file sharing application. I first used BitTorrent to download a Unix distribution. I was able to do it in an hour. It was going to take me 32 hours to do it using normal FTP. BitTorrent has gotten a very bad name primarily because of security, but it's actually the way things probably ought to work in the network. Comcast defended the action as necessary to maintaining equitable use of the network among its users. That file sharing users were consuming so much capacity that it was degrading the service to other users. Incidentally, it's now becoming clear that Netflix consumes about 20% of the capacity of the network during what we call prime time. An executive from Comcast has recently suggested that the regulation of traffic within the network should be an issue for the engineers, not for the lawyers. Now you might well ask, what's all this got to do with security? To make it clear, let me draw a comparison between internet connection or service provided by one's employer compared to that from a retail ISP. Enterprises vouch for the identity and the behavior of their users. In order to maintain their brand and avoid liability, enterprises govern the way their users use the internet. For example, they may not permit the employees to send spam, rude messages, or even bypass the controls by using cloud applications, even cloud applications as simple and as old as webmail. Similarly, they protect the enterprise and not coincidentally their employees from hostile traffic from the internet. Their firewalls do not treat all traffic the same. Enterprises may govern the sites that their employees can use, for example, forbidding them to use pornographic sites, or to download copyrighted materials, or even to use such applications as BitTorrent. Said another way, the enterprise network is not neutral. Many of the policies are justified by security, by protecting the enterprise, the users, and the community at large. Some retail ISPs also regulate traffic in the name of security. Many of us have recommended AOL for families. Earthlink filters my email for what it calls known spam, traffic that it simply believes to be spam, but probably couldn't demonstrate it if it had to. I'm willing to pay a premium for such non-neutral behavior. Even backbone carriers may govern traffic in the name of security. When SQL Slammer threatened the internet, the network operators began within tens of minutes to filter it. They didn't seek permission of government. They didn't ask their customers. They simply exercised good judgment to protect legitimate traffic. Several nation states have suggested that ISPs should identify and quarantine bots. Some carriers even favor such requirements. Requirements to do the right thing, because the requirement protects them from criticism or liability for doing the right thing. Let's face it, that's the source of a lot of our regulation. The people who are regulated want to be regulated, either for reasons of competition with their peers or because it justifies their doing what they think they ought to be doing in any case. So the issues of security and net neutrality are inextricably intertwined. The problem is that doing the right thing is often, not to say usually, easier than knowing what it is. It's easier to do the right thing when it coincides with your own interests than when it does not. On the other hand, our motives may be more selfless than they appear to other people. The devil is in the details. It would be very difficult to forbid carriers to do bad things while reserving to them the right to do the things that are necessary or even the things that are useful and desirable. All that said, I have greater confidence in the ability of the network operators to make these difficult judgments than I have in government to make them in advance. Since nothing is so difficult to remedy as bad law, we should legislate late. Others have argued that carriers cannot be trusted to put the interest of their stockholders, not to put the interest of their stockholders ahead of those of their customers, and incidentally of the common good. While I am skeptical of almost all large organizations, my 50 years in American business convinces me that it does a pretty good job of balancing the interest of its constituents, that is, its investors, managers, employees, customers, and yes, even taxpayers. For those who have not yet reached my conclusion, I suggest that at least in the short term, we should prefer contract, accountability, transparency, and competition to provide the necessary control. If after the passage of time we see actual abuse, that will be time enough for us to engage in political regulation or legislation. Thank you very much. Talk to you next week.